Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to this another episode of Ancient History of Bharat. I hope you guys are enjoying this series because now, as and when we progress to the further parts of this series, we will discover a few things that might have been, or it's almost certain that yes, these things have been deliberately kept out from the reach of a student. Okay, but thanks to internet, thanks to social media, and thanks to all those people who are stuck on phones, I guess, cell phones, mobile phones, handheld gadgets, these things are now like, like an organ, like an extension of human body itself, because whenever I go outside, I see people, they are largely on phones, on like, even if they get a few minutes, okay, a few minutes of spare time, they will pull out their phones. And I don't know what, I mean, do you have such work on your phones that you, anytime that you get some time, you'll take out your phones and start doing something? It's like, there are people out there who have genuine work, but they cannot just keep on, looking at their phone and keep on doing it for hours and hours at a stretch. All right. So yes, but there has to be something positive about it. Okay, that is thanks to people, thanks to internet and thanks to social media, I am able to get this message across. Okay. All right, so we'll straight ahead get into this agenda today. For those of you who are joining this series for the first time in this video, this is the book that I'm referring to, and I share my learnings on a daily basis. So far, we have reached a point where Alexander was a Greek king who has been over glorified, rather. Okay, the Greek people, they might like him. For them, he might be a hero and whatnot, but his exploits have been over glorified in this part of the world. Okay, and if indeed Alexander would have been such an impactful figure in the history of Bharat, why don't we have any folk tales about him? Why don't we have any folklore, any songs, any music, whatsoever reason? A powerful figure like him, like as he is being projected in our history textbooks, if indeed he were, so powerful, why did not his conquests and Greek conquests have an indelible mark on the culture of Bharat? This is the question that we must ask, because we don't have any unbiased sources of history for Alexander's conquest. Okay, guess what? Whose word we have to take, to corroborate and to reconstruct the history of Bharat during the times of Alexander. Okay, no prizes for guessing. Yes, Greeks, and Alexander himself was a Greek. So you cannot take a Greek's word about what did Alexander really manage to accomplish over here, because there is a clear, confirmation bias and a vested interest over there. So yes, whatever you hear about Alexander, at least in the context of Bharat, okay, take it with a pinch of salt. Not everything that the Western media tells you, or the Western sources, literary sources tells you about Alexander are true. Okay, all we know and all we can say with absolute certainty is he was a king. He made efforts to conquer this part of the world, and let's say, for the sake of argument, because we don't have things to corroborate either side, we don't have sources that say Alexander was absolutely successful, and at the same time, we don't have any sources that say Alexander was absolutely, his campaigns in Bharat were miserable and terrible and he had to face a defeat. So both those extremes are not true. So it is safe for us to assume that yes, he did come over here and he did face some heroic resistance from the Aryans of Bharat. Okay, and right before Alexander, there were rulers, Persian rulers, who employed, not even Persian, even Greek rulers, long before Alexander, who had employed mercenaries from Bharat. As in people who, like, you guys have seen this movie of Expendables, right? Of Sylvester Stallone and Jason Statham. Okay, so those are the people who are called mercenaries, who fight on your behalf for money. Okay, so the Greeks and the Persians, way before the Alexander, they used to hire mercenaries from Bharat, because they knew, okay, that something that the Aryans were good at was war. All right, So yes, in the previous video we had learned that Alexander, for since his empire was too big to be controlled by, let's say he had come so far down the plains in Bharat that his empire towards Iran and all those areas that started crumbling because he was too far away from the empire. Okay, so that is number one. Number two is while he was returning, he had to return largely because there was a mutiny in his army. He had a very heterogeneous army. There were Persians, there were, Persians and all the other conquered territories that he had managed to conquer. So he would also take over their army for further conquests. So there was a lot of diversity in his army, and hence leading to, one of the leading cause of the mutinies in the army of Alexander was this diversity. So he went back. While going back, he had to quell a lot of revolts. He had to face even resistance while going back as well, and he met his end while he was returning, and he died. Okay, so again there was a power vacuum. All right, and by this time, parallelly, when Alexander had arrived in the northwestern plains of Bharat, the area that we today like to call as Afghanistan and Pakistan. So when Alexander had just stepped into those territories, there was another hero who was coming up in Patliputra, that is Chandragupta Maurya. Okay, with the help of course, Kautilya, that we'll today like to call as Chanakya. He's also known by several other names such as Vishnugupta and all the others. Okay, all the history students might know. But yes, now we are at that point where Alexander has returned and Chandragupta Maurya, or the Maurya Empire, is on the rise. Okay. So before we begin, okay, there is one very interesting paragraph that R.C. Majumdar writes on page number 53 of this book before concluding the chapter and moving towards the Maurya Empire. Just to conclude and culminate everything there is to learn about Alexander. Okay, then it summarizes everything in this one paragraph. Okay. The only permanent result of Alexander's campaign was that it opened up communication between Greece and Bharat and paved the way for more intimate intercourse between the two. I would say this is still again a stretch of imagination from R.C. Majumdar as well, because we have learnt about Greek, kings hiring mercenaries from Bharat. So obviously, there was communication between them. Perhaps with Alexander having visited and Alexander having conquered a few territories, perhaps that connection might have deepened, okay, or expanded. That is all we can say. And this was achieved at the cost of untold sufferings inflicted upon Bharat. Massacre, rapine and plunder. This is something that has always been there. The fate of Bharat has always been shaped by massacres, rapine and plunder. Okay, the Greeks did it. All right, there's no doubt about it. The Greeks did it, the British did it, the Muslims obviously did it. There are well documented evidences as well. Okay, so unless you are a political stooge and a useful idiot, okay, you will not question these things. All right, so Greeks, they massacred people, they raped women, and there was a plunder on a larger scale. Okay, and that was without a precedent till then. Okay, so up until that point that the Alexander came, there was no massacres on that level. There were no rapes on that level. There was no plunders on that level. Okay, so Alexander set a precedent. Precedent of what? Murders, rapes and plunder. But repeated in later days by more invaders such as Sultan Mahmud, Timur Lung and Nadir Shah. Okay, so each and every individual invader who has come to Bharat for for wishes of plunder, they have done such things, okay, that the same things that we refrain from talking about. Why? Because they might hurt the sentiments of a certain community. So in the name of secularism, we have to just conveniently brush it under carpet. Let's not talk about that. Why? Because it will hurt the sentiments of a certain community. Alright, let's move to the next chapter. The next chapter is chapter number 4, Chandragupta and the Maurya Empire. Right. So far what we can say is, I mean, it would be like it would be ignorant to assume that Alexander was not aware about the Maurya Empire. I mean, if you are a ruler who aspires to rule over the entire world, obviously you are well aware of your contemporaries. Now, I'm not saying that Chandragupta was entirely a contemporary of Alexander, although he might have been. But all I am saying is Alexander must have had some knowledge about him. Okay, and it is certain, however, that his vast dominions were unaffected by the ruthless havoc and destruction caused by Alexander in Punjab. The career of Chandragupta, the founder of the Maurya dynasty, okay, to him belongs the credit of freeing this country from the Macedonian yoke and securing political unification for the greater part of the Aryans. Alright, so like I said, political unity. Alright, up until now we have seen scattered kingdoms, scattered Aryan kingdoms. There was no single united Aryanhood. Okay, so the first of all, the work that was done and commendable work that was done was by Chandragupta Maurya. Okay, he politically unites majority of the kingdoms. Okay, and such a political force, obviously Alexander knew about it. Alright. So yes, now here comes the idea that I would like to talk about right now. That is, there are no clear-cut evidences, concrete and explicit evidences about the origins of Chandragupta Maurya. The person who was, entirely and absolutely worthy of the title of a conqueror. Okay, Chandragupta Maurya, the person who set up the largest empire that, not exactly largest, there are other kings that are going to come up in future, but yes, he was the first one to have accomplished this feat of politically united largest empire of the Bharat, of the Aryans in Bharat. Okay, so let's examine. There are three sources of history that say different stories about the origin. When I say origin, I mean the birth of Chandragupta Maurya. Okay, now why does this matter? Okay, why do we discuss about the birth story of certain individuals? Okay, if indeed it were so important, okay, it would have been clearly, explicitly mentioned that he belonged to so and so Varna. There would not be so much disagreement between the Jain, Buddhist and the Puranic literature. Okay, all of these three, they disagree about the origins of Chandragupta Maurya. So if at all, the Varna in which you were born, if at all it mattered so much, if at all it was so sacred, and if indeed it was so rigid, that once you are born in so and so Varna, you cannot escape the barriers of that Varna. If indeed that was the case, okay, the Jain literature, the Buddhist literature and the Puranic literature would have explicitly mentioned the Varna in which Chandragupta Maurya was born. Why is there no clarity? Because the birth Varna does not matter. It absolutely does not matter. Okay. Now what we see in our current society is the perversion of the Westerners, and up to a certain extent I would say even the Islamic rulers as well. Okay, but we'll get into it in the future parts or in the future series that we hopefully start on this channel. But that there has to be a different series about how the Varna system has been misinterpreted by the entire world for that matter. Okay, and it still continues to be so. Alright, let's first examine. The Jain tradition represents him as the son of a village headman's daughter and adds, by way of explaining the title Maurya, that the village was inhabited by peacock tamers. Okay, the Brahminical and the Buddhist traditions supply more details but differ widely about his origin. Okay, the Brahminical sources describe him as base born, as somebody who was born in the lower Varnas, while the Buddhist traditions represent him as belonging to the Kshatriya Varna. Okay, so if indeed, like if there was, if it was absolutely crystal clear that Chandragupta Maurya belonged to the Kshatriya Varna, why do the Brahminical and the Jain sources, disagree with the Buddhist sources? Okay, now I'm not questioning the veracity of these sources, that's not what I'm doing. I'm saying is, The point that I'm trying to make over here is the Varna in which you were born absolutely does not matter. If indeed it mattered, our sources would explicitly mention the origins of these people, but they don't. Okay, they don't. Nandas were uprooted by the Brahmana Kautilya, who anointed Chandragupta as king. Okay, it was left to commentator of the Vishnu Puran, who suggests that Chandragupta was base born by way of explaining his title Maurya. Even the Vishnu Purana mentions that Chandragupta Maurya was base born, meaning somebody from the lower Varnas. Now there is one, history students might know of this, there is one very important play, that is Mudra Rakshasa. Okay, so it's a play in which, it's a drama rather, okay, it's about Chandragupta Maurya. That drama also shows Chandragupta as being born in the lower Varnas. The Buddhist tradition, however, gives us an altogether different picture. The Divyavadana refers Bindusara, son of Chandragupta, as anointed Kshatriya. This is where things will start getting interesting, because the Buddhists, okay, now keep in mind, I'm not again questioning the Buddhists, but I'm saying Buddha as, Buddhism as a spiritual system was started by Mahatma Buddha. Buddha himself was born into a Kshatriya clan of Sakyas. Okay, so here Buddhist traditions, they also claim that Bindusara, not Bimbisara, Bindusara, the son of Chandragupta Maurya, he was an anointed Kshatriya. That is, he was made a Kshatriya, or he was rather an appointed Kshatriya. Okay. According to the Mahavamsa, Chandragupta was a scion of the Kshatriya clan called Maurya. The existence of a Kshatriya clan of this name, even as early as the time of Gautam Buddha, is vouched for by Mahaparinibbana Sutta, one of the most authentic and ancient canonical texts of the Buddhists. Okay, so here Buddhists, the Buddhist text and the Buddhist literature, everything explicitly mentions that the Mauryas were indeed the Kshatriyas. Okay, so why do the Jains and the Brahmanical texts disagree with them? This is the question that we might ask. And there is rather one more important question. Why worry about the Varna of Chandragupta Maurya? Why not simply just appreciate him and learn from him what he was able to manage, able to accomplish without being born in so and so Varna? Okay. Alright, let's move ahead. We may therefore readily accept the view that Chandragupta belonged to the Kshatriya clan called the Mauryas, originally ruling over Piplivana, which probably lay in Uttar Pradesh. Buddhist texts, Chandragupta's father was the chief of the Maurya clan who died in a border fray, leaving his wife destitute. She had to seek safety in a far-off Pushpapura, that is Patliputra, that is Patna, where she gave birth to Chandragupta. The boy was brought up first by a cowherd and then by a hunter. Okay, these are Buddhist traditions or folklore. They think that the father of Chandragupta Maurya, he was the chief of the Maurya clan. Okay, before the Mauryas they developed into an empire, they were simply a clan, and a Kshatriya one at that. Okay, so the Kshatriya clan of Mauryas were led by father of Chandragupta. Now Chandragupta's father, he died in a battle. Okay, now Chandragupta's father who died in a battle, his wife, that is Chandragupta's mother, she had to seek refuge in Patliputra, that is modern day Patna. Okay, that is where Chandragupta was born. Okay. Now there is one very interesting thing over here. Kautilya in his Arthashastra gives expression to the national hatred of foreign rule. Okay, we as the descendants of Aryans have always hated and have always resisted foreign rule. Okay, it's mentioned in Arthashastra. You don't have to take my word for it. He points out how a foreign conqueror drains the country of its wealth and squeezes out of it as much as possible by exaction and taxation. That is what Kautilya wrote. The Pali work Mahavamsatika describes how both Chanakya and Chandragupta set out for collecting recruits from different places until they were made into a large army. Okay, so there are also instances of both the teacher and the pupil, that is Chanakya and Chandragupta, in that order. Chanakya was the teacher, Chandragupta was the pupil. They both of them, they go from village to village, town to town, trying to secure more and more recruits to their army, because they were going to fight the Nandas. Okay, the Mudra Rakshasa, that is the drama. Okay, the Mudra Rakshas, all as well as the Jain work, Parishta Parvan, refers to Chandragupta's alliance with the Himalayan king Parvataka. This Himalayan alliance gave to Chandragupta a composite army made of the Sakas, Yavanas, Kiratas, Kambojas, Prasasikas and the Balhikas, as stated in the Mudra Rakshasa. Interesting, Yavanas are Greeks. Okay, so the people who fought alongside with Chandragupta to overthrow the Nanda Empire had Greeks. The Greeks fought with Chandragupta. Okay. Let's see. Unfortunately, definite details of the conquest of Magad by Chandragupta are not preserved. Okay, how exactly did Chandragupta manage to conquer Magad? Again, those are, we don't know them. The texts are not preserved. We do not have enough sources to build a consistent narrative. But I guess for the purpose of studying history, we can, I would say, we can think that Chandragupta was able to take over Magad. Keep in mind, before Chandragupta, Mahapadma had, made Magad into an empire, and it would not have been easy for Chandragupta to overtake Magad. But since we do not have any sources, we can think that yes, there might have been some. I'm not saying that overtaking of Magad by Chandragupta would have been a cakewalk. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is he overtook it, or he conquered it. Okay, the Jain tradition similarly compares the advance of Chandragupta to a child putting a finger in the middle of a hot pie, instead of starting from the edge, which was cool. All this explains how Chandragupta, without beginning from the frontiers and taking the towns in order as he passed, invaded the heart of the country only to find that his army was surrounded and destroyed. I would say yes. Like I said, we cannot simply just assume that overtaking of Magad by Chandragupta would have been a cakewalk. Obviously, he would have faced some setbacks. Okay. Okay, let's talk about this as well. There is one interesting paragraph on page number 60. While Chandragupta was busy laying the foundations of his empire in Bharat, the Greek king Seleucus, who had succeeded Alexander in the eastern part of his empire, was moving towards Bharat to recover the lost possessions of the late emperor. But while Alexander had to fight against a divided Bharat, split into a multitude of states, his successor had to face a united and a much stronger Bharat, organized by an able leader. Okay. Now, yes, we cannot absolutely take this as the absolute truth. Agreed that Alexander had faced, that while Alexander came over here, largely the kingdoms were politically divided, and when this, who is that person? Seleucus, the Greek king Seleucus came over here. He faced a politically united Bharat. Okay, things might not have been as black and white as we study them right now. Okay. The Greek writers do not give the details of his conflict with Chandragupta, but merely record the result. Seleucus had to purchase peace by ceding to Chandragupta territories then known as Arya, Arcosia, the capitals which were respectively known as Herat, Kandahar and Kabul, and probably also part of Baluchistan. So largely all the areas of the northwest frontier province that we today like to call as Pakistan and Afghanistan. Okay, even Balochistan. Okay, I do not count Balochistan as a part of Pakistan. That's a separate history lesson altogether. And that is again a very big shocker. Why don't we study these things? But be that as it may, okay. So all these territories, after Alexander, Seleucus came to the throne of the Greek Empire. He wanted to gain back all the territories that Alexander had conquered, and now that lay in the hands of, lay under the Mauryan Empire. But he had to face defeat against Chandragupta. Okay. Curiously enough, the Greek writers are very much silent on the exploits of Seleucus in Bharat. Why? Weren't they very prolific history writers, the Greeks? They had written prolifically and elaborately about the exploits of Alexander, up to a point that they have exaggerated things. Then why haven't they written about Seleucus? There is something for you to think about. Okay, because he did not, I would say, we can't exactly say he did not win as well, because we do not have, explicit evidences for this. All we can do is manage to come out with, rational inferences based on the peace treaty that he signed with Chandragupta. And that peace treaty was highly skewed in the favor of Chandragupta. So that says that he might have had an upper hand in this conflict between Seleucus and Chandragupta. Seleucus maintained friendly relations with the Mauryan court and sent Megasthenes as his ambassador, who lived in Patliputra for a long time and wrote a book. Wide extent of his empire leaves no doubt that his life was mostly spent in military campaigns, but of this we have no authentic account. Okay, even for Chandragupta Maurya, he might have spent a large chunk of his life, on military campaigns, but as everything else, we do not have trustworthy accounts of how exactly did these campaigns look. Okay. According to very late Jain traditions, Chandragupta in his last days renounced the world and followed the Jain migration, led by Bhadrabahu, to a place in Mysore known as Shravanabelagola, where some local inscriptions still perpetuate the memory of Chandragupta and Bhadrabahu living together as saints. Okay. So yes, towards the end of his life, Chandragupta, if we are to believe the Jain traditions, he was persuaded by the Jains to practice the Jain faith. Okay, he traveled to a place called Shravanabelagola, and that is where it is said that he fasted unto death. Now, fasting unto death is, it's considered to be very sacred and divine by the Jains, and that is what Chandragupta did. Alright, that's it for this episode of the ancient history of Bharat. I will see you guys in the next episode, and from next episode we'll discuss about the extent of the empire. Okay, what were the borders of the Mauryan Empire, and what was their system of administration, and so on and so forth. That's it for this episode. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.